Okay, you've had a long lunch, time to get something happening. I heard a few reports this morning that Peter Doherty guy, the MC you had, he was rubbish. So they decided they really needed the ITIL Ninja to come out and stir things up. So we're going to stir things up? Yeah! Jeez, you guys are pathetic. Are we going to stir things up? Yeah, that's more like it. So now for a very exciting session. You know, they gave me a script about Karen, so let me tell you what I'm going to do with Karen's bio. I'm going to tear it up. I don't know. I don't need it. I know Karen so well. Karen has been doing this stuff since before me. It doesn't mean she's old, just means she's very, very wise. So she's been doing it for a long time. For those of you that come here to the itSMF or have been to other itSMFs, you've seen Karen speak before. Karen's a wonderful contributor to the forum of her own time. Not just as a speaker, but as a practitioner. So she helps us understand how we do these things, and she also gives us key takeaways about how we can make things better. I've worked with Karen a number of times at a number of large companies, NAB, ANZ, Australia Post, all over the place. And she gives back as a practitioner, always good advice. So I'd like you to put your hands together and give a warm welcome for Karen.
Thank you for that introduction, Ninja. I was going to call you Peter then by mistake. And just welcome to if anyone's on social media, you will know that this is the itSM Pengi, who does all the itSMF conferences around the world. So he's just dropped in to this one. So IT Service Management Monopoly, the game of tool selection. So many organizations approach tool selection like a game of Monopoly, like a roll of the dice, like a throw of the cards, like a game of chance. And this is evident, and it says this in the abstract, evident that organizations replace their tools every 2 to 3 years. And I was talking to a couple of very nice ladies just before I came in to do this presentation, and they were reading the abstract, and they said, actually, we did it in 12 months. Got a tool in and dispatched it again in 12 months. So it is obviously still a valid problem that organizations are facing. So there's 2 key things that I'd like to talk to you about. One is how to play the game. If you are looking for a replacement service management tool or looking to migrate, how do you play the game to make sure you're not like those ladies I just mentioned and throwing a tool out in 12 months' time or 2 to 3 years? It's an expensive investment. You need to get it right. But the other thing, and sorry, on that, how to play the game, you will have heard a lot of webinars and read papers and presentations on tool selection. It is a popular subject. But obviously, there's still things that are missing. And that's what I want to try and tease out this afternoon. The other thing I'd like to talk about is when to play the game. When is it a justified reason to migrate to a new solution? So 2 things, when to play the game and how to play the game. So there's our IT Service Management Monopoly board with the plethora of tools, and there's many, many more out there. Now, I do have a disclaimer. The placement of the IT service management solutions on this board in no way correlate with the monetary value of the properties on the real board. Get that one out of the way, okay? It's totally random. So there's our Monopoly board. And as I said, many organizations get to go, roll the dice, select a tool, implement, only to find, as they're going on this journey, they suddenly turn over a chance card that says, your CFO, or the business, would now like your service management tool to interface with SAP for billing and contractual and procurement purposes. Like, whoops, we didn't see that one coming. So we roll the dice again, and we keep going past go, and we don't collect 200. In fact, we end up in jail because of lack of poor planning and preparation. We also see a lot of organizations, and I've certainly seen them, who play the game for the wrong reasons. So, as tool replacement is a recurring theme in our industry, it's time to break that cycle. It's time to stop trading one tool for another. It's time to stop playing it like a game of chance and a roll of the dice. So this presentation aims to be your get-out-of-jail-free card. So, when to play the game? So, as I said, so many organizations, play it when they do play for the wrong reasons, but when to play the game. I hear organizations and people say to me, we're replacing our service management technology because service management isn't working. And no consideration's being given to the fact that the processes are not very good, or they're broken, or they're a bottleneck, or they're inefficient and ineffective. Broken processes in tool A will be broken in tool B. No consideration is that the processes haven't been subject to continual service improvement and are failing to meet the needs of the business. It's not the tool that's causing that. No considerations given that the people who have to use the tool haven't had adequate training to feel comfortable in using it, or people haven't been given the training to exploit the capabilities and the functions within the tool to meet emerging and changing business needs. No considerations given to the fact that when the tool was implemented, there was a total lack of organizational change. So people didn't know why the tool was being replaced, what it was supposed to achieve, how it aligned with the strategic direction of the organization. They didn't understand the impact it was going to have on them, so they're resisting using it and bypassing the tool. So no consideration is given to those things. So it's too easy to point the finger at the vendors and just keep going past go, blaming the processes or service management is broken because of the tool, and it's not the cause of the tool. So what are some of the justified reasons? Not just to blame the technology. If we're blaming technology for poor processes, lack of training, lack of organizational change, lack of education, that is just whitewash. We are just covering our backsides for something that we have got wrong, something that we haven't done. So what are some of the real reasons to do the change? Well, outdated technology, a bit like that. Who uses one of those anymore, apart from playing Monopoly? So the tool could be outdated because it could be homegrown tool that at the time when it was built, and it could be something maybe in Lotus Notes or something similar, when it was first built, it met the needs of the business. Some basic tracking, requests and incident tracking type stuff. So people now, because as you'll see from this conference, there are a plethora of really good tools out there with some great capabilities and functionality. So homegrown tools really are not a solution. They're not going to allow you to do some of the clever things the tools on the market are today. So that is a good reason to say it's time for us to migrate and catch up with other organizations where they are on the journey. It could be that you have a third-party tool that also has become outdated because the vendor has not subjected it to continual service improvement. They've not introduced new capability and functionality, so you can't respond to the emerging needs and changing needs of the business. So you're getting left behind. So that if they haven't subjected their tool to continual service improvement and introduced the new features and capabilities that you would like, then that is a reason to migrate to a new solution. Maintenance costs. If you have people, a number of people in your organization, maintaining the tool, trying to get it to do what it was supposed to do, trying to improve its performance, trying to fix faults or fix things that it said it would do in the specification of requirements, if you're having to do things that the vendor should be doing, then it's time to look at migration. Administration. Now, all of the tools, I would purport to say, need some administration. They need someone to add users to the system, to add user groups, to change security, to add privileges, etc. Things that are unique to your organization. For a large organization, that might be somebody full-time or a couple of people. For a small to medium organization, it might be a part-time person, at most one person. But if you have a team of people having to administer your selected tool, if you have a team of people who are having to maintain an organizational structure and security groupings in the tool itself, because it won't interface with Active Directory, because it won't interface with other systems, it won't integrate, then again, that's time to look at migrating to a tool that will minimize the administration overheads that you may have today. Because it's costly. This is the doozy. This is the big one that gets organizations. And I can see people nodding and smiling, going, oh yeah, customization, why did we do that? There is a distinct difference between customization and configuration. Okay. All tools will need some configuring, as I've just mentioned. We all have things unique. We all have different response times to incidents that we need to put in. We'll have different requests, different categories of change, different categories of incident. So there is some configuration that's needed. Customization is when you've changed the source code. You've gone in and changed the code, which now will make it extremely difficult for you to upgrade. It will make your upgrade path very complex, very expensive, and very risky. So if you've customized, either because you've let IT in to play with the tool, and IT guys like to tinker, and girls like to tinker, or if you've had to go in and customize and change the source code because it's not doing what you need it to do, then it's time to move and look at an upgrade. Version lock. This is where you're locked into a particular version of your tool. And again, I've seen people going, yeah, that's us. So it obviously is getting home, and people are experiencing this. Now, version lock could be for a number of reasons. One might be due to what I've just talked about, over-customization or customization, where we realize because of the amount of customization we've done that we just can't afford the time and the effort to move to the next version, because all that customization is going to have to be reapplied, and it's going to be a risky migration to the next version of the software. So we're locked in. We also might find that we're in version lock because of the nature of the tool that we have in place. That the upgrade path for the tool that we have selected and are currently using is so complex, is so expensive that we just can't justify it. And I know organizations that are in version lock or have been in version lock because the upgrade is going to cost the same, if not more, than the purchase price and the initial implementation did. And they say we just can't justify that. So they're locked into the current version and therefore unable to take advantage of new features and new capabilities that the vendor may have introduced in more recent versions. It may be that the upgrade path is so complex and risky because of the nature of the vendor's tool in the first place. It might be that their offering actually isn't one service management solution. It's actually a number of modules or solutions that the vendor has purchased over time to create their service management offering, that they've bolted together. And when they upgrade, they have to re-establish all of those integration points and interfaces all over again. So that's why it's complex, risky, and very expensive. So if you're in version lock for those reasons, then it's definitely time to consider a migration to a new solution. And vendor lock. Organizations also may feel or perceive that they're locked into a particular vendor because the thought of having to migrate, the thought of having to go back out to market again, the thought of having to migrate all that data, the thought of having to cleanse that data is just mind-boggling. And it's just like, we just can't do that. So they perceive they're locked in. But they can talk to organizations, and I know organizations that having done the careful planning, and preparation, and careful selection, and worked on choosing the right vendor, because that's very important too, that you have a right relationship with the vendor, have had a very seamless and very easy migration path. And when you think about it, all of the vendors here would want you to have a smooth migration path. They will handhold you every step of the way because it's their reputation that's on the line if it doesn't. So it shouldn't be that you feel locked in because of the fear of moving to a new tool. So if the organization perceives that they're in vendor lock, then they just need to think again and turn that thinking onto its head. What are some other reasons? Inflexibility of the tool. Tools now are becoming a lot more flexible. And you can see that when you talk to the vendors in the exhibition hall. We now have more flexible solutions. We can have SaaS as well as on-premise. So if the tool that you're using isn't flexible enough to keep up with your changing business needs and offering things like collaboration tools, knowledge management that's automatically populated from discussions and from incidents and request tickets, if it doesn't integrate with CRM and ERP tools, if it doesn't offer you things maybe like live chat, it doesn't offer you the shopping cart experience for your end users and customers as part of the service catalog. If it hasn't kept up and been flexible enough to add those features to each up-and-coming version, then it's time to look at a new solution. Because you will want, or you may want, to take advantage of those things. If you found that you're asking the vendor, we've got a new business need, could we have this as a feature in the tool? Now, they're not going to respond to everybody who says, I want this, I want this, I want this. But if there's a critical mass, are they responsive to that? Is there a user group that's saying, we would now like this feature in the tool, and they respond? So they're flexible enough to hear what your needs are and actually put those features and capabilities into the next version of the tool. Solution sunsetting. Show me the money. Solution sunsetting also might be a reason for migration. And this can often happen when the vendor that you are currently engaged with actually isn't just an IT service management vendor. They actually have lots and lots of different tools available. And they may have lots and lots of different versions of those tools available. And in times of financial constraint, what do? They either say, we're going to sunset a load of versions of those tools because we're not going to support them anymore, or they actually sunset the tool itself. So you may be in a situation where the vendor is saying, you now have to move to this version of our offering in a time frame that suits the vendor, not you. Or you need to now move to a totally different solution because we're sunsetting that one. And again, in a time frame that suits the vendor because they don't want to support it anymore. Or you stick with what you've got and you're just on your own. So if you're in that situation where the solution you're using has been sunset, then again, if you're having those conversations with your vendor, it's time to think about migrating. It's time to think about migrating to a vendor that has one service management solution and a number of supported versions. And they will tell you, we will always have 5 versions in support or 3 in support, whatever it is. You should know when you're doing your selection, which I'll talk about, how many, so you have an idea of the time frame in which you would have to move to a new version to retain support for that. So looking for a vendor who, as I say, one service management solution, that's what they do, and that's what they do well. So you're not going to find yourself in this situation that they're going, oh, we can't afford to support all these tools that we've got out there. And the final final reason you might want to migrate is poor support. If you're not getting the support that you need from your vendor, if they're not being responsive when you have issues, responsive when you have faults, if they're not responsive when you need maintenance, or you need help, or you need some assistance with administration or configuration, whatever it might be, if you're not getting that response in a timely manner, then that is a good reason to think about migrating to a tool. If the vendor doesn't understand your business, or have an idea of your business, and what your business priorities are, so that they can respond accordingly, then it's time to think about migrating to a new tool and a new vendor to boot. So they are all reasons, good reasons, and right reasons to migrate. Not because the processes are broken, not because we haven't trained and educated people, not because we haven't applied organizational change when we introduced the tool, which I'll mention towards the end, and not because we didn't do the careful planning and preparation to select the right tool in the first place, and we're just going to do the same thing again. We're just going to roll the dice and play it like a game of chance. So that's when to play. Justified reasons, not just covering our backsides because we just want to make an excuse because we haven't done the right things. It's an excuse to the business to say we're changing the tool because we know service management is broken. And we can point the finger at the vendor and blame them for a while. And hopefully the business will say, okay, at least you're doing something about it. And in 12 months they'll realize it's just as bad as it was because you've just put broken processes back into a new tool. Yeah. And we often see the situation where, tool A goes out, tool B comes in, B goes out, tool C comes in, C goes out, and lo and behold, A comes back in again. Yeah. Something's not right. So, if we have justified reasons to migrate, how do we play the game to make sure that the tool we select is in for the long haul and that we have a long-term partnership with the vendor of that solution? How do we make sure that when we pass go, we do collect the $200 and we don't end up in jail? So as we can see there, there's a plethora of tools to choose from, and there's lots more as well. So they're not all on there. So how do we make sure we get the right one for us? Basically, there's no shortcut. Careful planning and preparation. Yeah. I was talking to someone else this morning who said, we just rushed into our tool implementation. We were just told, you're implementing this tool. No planning and preparation, no careful selection to make sure it was the right solution for that organization. So which side of the street do we shop on when we're choosing? Well, firstly, you need to know what it is you want. And when I say you, I mean your business, not what IT wants. IT does have requirements, but what does your organization need? What do you want? So all of those things up there will get you from A to B. The barrow will get you from A to B, the boot will get you from A to B, the sports car will get you from A to B, and so will the ship. But which one do you need? What are your requirements? How fast do you need it to go? So the key thing here is to engage all of your stakeholders. That's the first big mistake that organizations make. It's done in IT, and it's driven by IT, and we don't engage the stakeholders, the people who have a stake in what we are doing. And I'm talking about stakeholders. Often we go, okay, we'll talk to the end users because they'll have to use it, and IT people will have requirements as well. There are other stakeholders. They could be your clients or external customers. They could be suppliers who may have to interface with this tool. What you don't want to happen, as I sort of alluded to before, is you choose a tool and then the CFO says, can I have a report of some financial data on these type of assets that you have stored in the tool? And you suddenly realize you can't do that. The tool isn't capable or will need some major customization to do that, because you didn't go and ask the CFO what the requirements were. So you need to identify all of your stakeholders. Now, you obviously can't, as you get further into the gathering of requirements, have everyone in the organization in workshops. You can't do that. Not unless you're a very small organization. So for most of us, you can't engage people at that level. But you need to so some stakeholders will have a bigger part to play in stating what their requirements are and helping with the selection process. But you should let everyone in the organization know what it is you're intending to do. Communicate and give them a channel to have input to the process. So they can specify what their requirements are, and they can be given due consideration. You may be surprised what you'll find. The other thing about engaging the stakeholders is to make sure you understand what the needs of the business are now, but into the future as well. You want a tool that's going to meet the future requirements. Okay, so you need to understand the organization's strategy and what it's trying to achieve moving forward. And how big do you want it? Yeah. Do you want a tool that's going to support all 26 ITIL processes? Do you need that now and into the future? Do you need integration with CRM and ERP tools? Do you need integration with other service management tools that your suppliers may be using? Do you need bi-directional ticketing? So how big is this thing that you're looking at? And it's your stakeholders that are going to be telling you that and gathering. And remember, it's not just what you need today, but what you need going forward into the future. So if your organization's strategy for IT includes, we are going to move more services or more of the services we provide today into the cloud, then clearly your strategy may be looking at a SaaS solution that you might not need today, but in 3 years' time, that's where the business is going to be going, and so you should be there too. If you don't know what the strategy is, how do you align that choice of tools with that? So make sure you engage everybody and gather their requirements. You also need to think about what is it that you can afford. So when you've got an idea of your high-level requirements, do some market research. Have a look at some of the tools out there and what some of the ballpark figures are. Because it might be that you get yourself into a situation where you say, well, we think we want it this big, and we've got some high-level requirements now that will make sure we align with our strategic direction. And we've looked at some of the solutions that will meet those, but it's just way beyond our budget. It might be, if that's the case, that when you do put your specification of requirements together, that some of the optional ones will change. Because you're going to go, well, we would have liked to ask for that, but we just can't. Because we just can't afford it. And we're just going to have to choose something that meets our mandatory requirements. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Or it might be that you have to create a business case to go back and say, based on the information we've got, based on these high-level requirements, we need additional budget if we're going to get a tool selected that meets the needs of the business moving forward. And if in that business case you can align that argument with the business strategy to say this tool will support our direction of our organization over the next however many years, then that makes a good case to get additional funding. And think about then what features, based on what people are asking for in terms of requirements, what features are you going to need in the tool? So if requirements include things like, more collaboration, ability, then what features do you need this tool to do? Do you need, as I mentioned, live chat? Do you need some sort of social media channels for collaboration in the tool? What features do you need? Again, what interfaces and integration with other systems do you need? Do you need it to have auto-discovery so you can populate a configuration management system? Do you need integration with other sources of data, such as financial data and assets that are maintained and contained elsewhere in the organization? So do you need integration to those to populate a federated configuration management system? So what features do you need to achieve the outcomes that the business is looking for? As I mentioned, do you need interfaces to other service management tools so you don't manually have to move tickets from one system to another and back again, which opens up areas for risk. The key thing here, the crucial thing here I want to mention is now that you're starting to gather your requirements and you're starting to document them, you need to identify of those requirements which are mandatory and which are optional. Mandatory ones are the ones that you will not move on, regardless of what a vendor tells you. You have to have those. So identify those. The optional ones are the nice to have. But what you need to do with your optional ones is rate them. What would be really, really nice to have, and what would be, it's down on the list. It's, nice, but... And if you rate your optional requirements, the ones you really, really would like score a 5, if the vendor ticks the box, and the ones that you're not too bothered about score a 1. That allows you to do a comparison between the vendors who've met all your mandatory requirements. They're now on the table, and you can do a comparison. So I'll just show an example of an example of that. And this is a very simplified example. Your specification requirements will probably have lots more columns and definitely lots more rows than what are up there. There's only 4. But I just wanted to show in this example. So we've said, amongst all of our criteria, our requirements, we've got 4 here: self-populating knowledge management, live chat, self-help, and discovery tools. And we've told the vendor which are mandatory and which are optional, if we want to, which we should. So we've said mandatory and this one, and the vendor said, yes, I can provide that, and there'd probably be some commentary field to fill in. So we've scored a 1 there. Live chat, we've said that's optional, but it wasn't very important, so we gave it a weighting of 1. So where the vendor has said yes, they've scored a 1. Self-help portal, we said that was really, really desirable, so we gave it a weighting of 5. So any vendor who says yes to that scores a 5. This vendor said, no, we don't do discovery tools. We had a weighting of 3, so they wouldn't score anything. So you get the idea how it would allow you to start comparing the vendors alongside each other for this cumulative score, because the ones that are giving you more of the highly desirable things are going to be scoring a larger number. So it's one way, it's not the only way, but it's one way of helping in the selection process. What you probably don't want to do is show the vendor a weighting. That's your business. Yeah? So what else do we need to consider? Okay. Location. I've already mentioned you now have the option of on-premise or SaaS solutions. So where do you want to locate the solution that you're looking at? It might be something that's driven by your business strategy, as I've mentioned. And there's pros and cons to both. Some organizations don't want to manage the infrastructure, they just want to give that to the vendor to manage, so they look at SaaS solutions. Other people may, for other reasons, say, no, we need on-premise. There might be security fears or whatever, whether they're founded or not. But some people may be limited by regulatory requirements. So if the SaaS vendor, for example, has their data center overseas, the legislation may say you can't store your data offshore. So that might not be a solution for you, and you may say, well, the solution then is on-premise or another SaaS solution. So think about that, and again, make sure that's in line with your organizational strategy. Also need to make sure there's room for growth, that this tool that you're looking at, or the tools, will grow with you, that the vendor has a track record of keeping up with industry trends and emerging themes. So do, again, a bit of research on, talk to the vendors. What did you introduce in the last 2 or 3 versions of your software? Are they being innovative? So make sure you're not going to be stuck with something that in 3 or 4 years' time means you're behind the ball, behind the game, because the vendor didn't come up. Make sure you had room for growth. And make sure you look at the vendor's credentials, their financial stability, their user base. Do they have a user group, and how often do they have it? Yeah. You'll want to get references, which I'll talk about in a moment, reference sites that you can talk to. What do they say about the vendor's credentials? What's their project management experience and implementation experience? As mentioned, what's their user base and size of organizations? The other thing you want to be looking for and asking about are timeframes. So how long does the implementation take? How long does it take to do an upgrade? And how often do upgrades happen? How long does it take to get support for the tool? How quickly will they respond to your cry for help if something breaks? So ask those questions about implementation, timeframes, upgrades, support, etc. You also want to make sure there's no hidden costs. You don't want to get that surprise tax bill. So yes, there'll be a purchase cost. Does that include implementation? What's the cost of project management, if that's additional? What are the costs of licenses, fixed, concurrent, end-user licenses, floating, whatever you want to call them? What's the licensing cost? And there may be various models that the vendor can provide you with. What are the costs of support, if that's additional? Is there additional costs for upgrades to the tool? So make sure you probe and ask all those questions so you know exactly what it's going to cost you in the long run. Some vendors will also provide you with the tool, but will also then offer you templates for best practice processes. That might be an additional cost. So just make sure you ask those questions. Some may say, no, that just comes out of the box as it is. All the templates are in there. You do what you like with them. Others may have that as an additional offering, but make sure you ask the questions so you don't get any surprises. So you've now you've gathered all your requirements, so you're now going to be able to go put an RFP out to vendors or an RFI and then an RFP. But one thing I'd like to mention at this point, and we've got any vendors in the room? I know we've got one. Have you got any other vendors? There's a couple of hands. A couple of hands went up. And I think they'll love me for saying this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. When you put out your RFI, RFP, do not regurgitate ITIL. I'm getting a nod from Peter. So I've seen so many RFPs that go out. It's a section that says incident management. And it says, we need to have unique numbering on instant tickets. We need to be able to pass a ticket from one person to another. We need to be able to limit the people who can close a ticket. We need to be able to put a ticket in a suspended situation, or suspended status, and so on. And so we get thousands and thousands of questions regurgitating ITIL, that the poor vendor, God bless them, has to answer each one, and they might just have to put a Y against them all and some commentary against each one. Not a great job. All you need to ask, if you're looking for a tool to support the incident management process, is, can you support ITIL v3 2011 incident management? They can say yes or no and then comment on that. Job done. If there's anything up above and beyond that that you need, yes, then you put it in line by line. In addition to that, we need incident management to do these things. Okay? If you don't think it's covered, then call it out and specify it. So now, having done that, you can select the right solution for the long haul and one that meets business needs. So what do you need to do? Well, firstly, you need to shortlist. The process needs to get you down to 2 or 3 vendors. For each of the ones that are going to be on your shortlist, you're going to get them in meetings, you're going to have workshops, you're going to have presentations. You don't want to do that for 10 or 15 vendors. It'll take you forever. So get it down to 2 or 3. Use the mandatory and optional weighting that I talked about. Narrow it down based on what you found out and the questions you've asked. So keep it to a minimum so it's manageable, and you can spend the right time with each vendor on that shortlist, and you're not rushing because you've got 10 to do and you're never going to make it. Get the vendor to give you reference sites to talk to. Organizations may be of a similar size or similar industry sector. But make sure when you do that you ask the hard questions, because of course the vendor is going to give you a customer to talk to that loves them. They're not going to give you someone to talk to who doesn't like them. Yeah. So ask them, how was the implementation? How often do you upgrade? How easy has it been to upgrade? How was the migration when it took place? How good was the vendor at project management? What's the support been like when you've had issues? Are they responsive? Are they listening? Do they listen to your needs? If there's one thing you could change about the vendor, what would it be? So do some of those probing. But the other thing is, open your community chest. That's here. Talk to other people in your community about what tools they're using or have used, how they found it, would they recommend it, any issues. Look at the social media channels, Facebook and LinkedIn who have IT service management groups. Ask in there, what tools you're using, what would you recommend? So get references from those people as well. Talk to the industry analysts, Gartner and Forrester, what would they say? Get as much information that you can. But the best is really talking to other users of the tool, I would suggest, or of the tools you're considering. Get the vendor to come in and present. And by present, I mean give you a demonstration of the tool. And it may be that you have to ask them to come in 2 or 3 times to the organization. And they should be willing to do that, unless you're tire kicking. Please don't tire kick. Yeah? Because you may have a presentation that they do to IT that would be to the people who are going to have to administer the tool, so you're going to show how easy it is to do workflows and processes, and how easy it is to configure things. You may then have a presentation to the end user, who don't really care how you configure processes, but they'd like to see how they're going to feel when they're using it. So you may have a number of presentations with different audiences. Okay? And as I say, the vendors should be willing to do that. If they're not, that should set alarm bells off straight away. Okay? But also, I just wanted to mention at this point, manage expectations of your audiences. The vendor, when they come in to present and demonstrate, will show you all the bells and whistles that this tool is capable of. Of course they are, they're trying to sell it. Okay? And you may have, especially when you're presenting maybe to end users of the tool, and IT people, I guess, they're just going to go, wow, look what it can do. How awesome are we going to be? But the fact is, you're probably not going to be that awesome day one. If you're only doing incident, problem, and change management, for example, today, on day one of migration, you're only going to be doing incident, problem, and change management. You're not suddenly going to have service catalog and self-help and self-populating knowledge management, etc. You're going to do those things incrementally. So manage the expectations of the people who are receiving those presentations to say, by the way, yes, we're looking at all those capabilities. When we go live, and this is another point, when you do migrate, take the opportunity to do process improvement on the processes you currently have in place. So you can demonstrate benefit day one. Yeah? Or it might be the implementation of one process you haven't been doing before. So there should be opportunity for process improvement. So you tell the audiences that. You know, we're going to improve our instant problem change process. We'll go live on the 1st of September, and then we have a journey plan. In October, we are going to turn on service level management, whatever it might be. Then in the next following month, we're going to do something else. So have a 30, 60-day, 90, 120-day journey plan that's achievable, that you share with the business, you share with the organization. So you just need to manage their expectations. But remember, that journey plan, again, should be in line with the strategic direction of the organization and the needs of the business, not what IT would like. Yeah. Shopping cart experience, they love that, they must want it. Well, that fact, knowledge management is actually far more important to the business than an Amazon-type experience. So just manage expectations. And also, you may want to, when you've narrowed it down to say, we think that's the one we want, ask for a proof of concept or a pilot. And say to the vendor, we want you to show us how our incident management process will look like in your tool. This gives you an idea to see how easy it is to configure, how easy it is to put the process in. You may have a particular integration or interface need. You say to the vendor, show me how the tool would then interface with SAP to extract this information. And the vendor, if they're of the worth, should say, yes, we will do that. And this is a great opportunity for those people who are going to have to administer the tool to see how it works, how it feels, and how easy it's going to be to work with. Now, the vendor may charge you for that service, because it's a piece of work, but generally they will say, well, we'll charge you for it, but if you buy our tool, we then discount what that cost you. But when you think of the investment you're making in these tools, then it's worthy to have that upfront investment in doing a pilot or a proof of concept. But it should be on the one that you're pretty sure that's the one you're going to choose, so that you actually choose the right one and don't make the mistakes. So, we're there. Okay. We've selected the right tool for the right reasons, for the right price, all the stakeholders engaged, all the requirements. Yeah, and we're here now for the long haul, and we've chosen a vendor that we can have a long-term relationship with. So you can now go and purchase, but negotiate. You do the same when you buy a car, which is a large investment. You don't just say, what's it going to cost, and here's the money. Well, some people might, but I can't do that. You negotiate. So see if there's any room for movement in the price. If you're not comfortable with that, look around the organization and see, is there someone in the organization who does procurement, who has those skills and will step in and help you with those negotiation on price and licensing costs, etc. So get some help if you don't feel you have the right skills. And the last thing that I'd want to mention, or to talk about, which I mentioned before, is the organizational change aspect. And anyone who knows me go, yeah, I would have to mention that, wouldn't she? Yeah. It's my pet subject. But we tend to forget, or many organizations tend to forget, that when we're introducing this tool, we're not just introducing a piece of technology. We're actually impacting people. It's going to change the way they do things. If it doesn't change the way they do things, then why have we changed the tool? It should change things. It should make them better. So you're going to impact people. You're going to impact the way they work, how they work. You may even impact their job. You may automate something that takes someone's job away. So you need to consider organizational change. You need to make sure people understand why you're doing it, how it aligns with the organization's strategy, what's the impact going to be on them, what's in it for them. And you need to make sure that that communication is two-way. The people have the ability to come back and ask questions. So it's a two-way channel. You know, ask questions and listen to the answers, what people are saying. So you need to identify all your stakeholders. Often we just talk about, yeah, we've got our executive sponsor. Now that person, that senior management commitment is very important. I'm not knocking that. But you also need to identify all of your other sponsors and middle management across the organization that are going to need to transition you and me through this change. So we talk in organizational change about senders and messages. People generally in the organization want to hear the reason for the change, the business reason for the change, from the most senior person in the organization. When I refer to the exec, that's what I'm talking about. They want to hear the messages about what's it going to mean to me from their line managers or supervisors. So there's different messages and different senders we need to identify as well, so everyone understands what it's going to mean for them. So they're able, if we identify resistance to the change, I don't want to use that tool, I like the other one, or I'm not going to do this change processes. We need to identify that resistance so we can manage it. If we don't know it's there, then it's just going to fester. And our investment in the tool will just be wasted because people will just bypass it, not use it, misuse it, whatever it might be. So don't forget organizational change. We need to make sure those people we've identified to help people transition, they have the capability and the skills to do that. Do they have the right answers? Are they able to explain things to people? So just to summarize, don't forget that you do this for the right reason, when to play the game. Not because processes are broken, not because you haven't done continual service improvement, not because you're not educating. The right reasons, which you talked about, you know, version lock, over-customization, vendor lock, high maintenance, high administration costs, etc. Make sure you identify all of your stakeholders and engage them in some way as part of this process. You don't want surprises that you don't want to find there were requirements you didn't identify. And do the careful selection. Take time. You don't rush in and buy a house. You don't rush in and buy a car, which are large investments. You take time to decide what it is you need, what's available, what would suit you. So take time to select. Do that careful planning and preparation that we talked about. And take the opportunity to do some process improvement as part of this. So when you do migrate, you can demonstrate a benefit to the business at that point in time. So they don't go, God, that cost, you know, so many $1,000 and we've seen nothing. So you can show something day one. And finally, don't forget that organizational change aspect. If you really want to get the return on investment, it's not just a new piece of technology, it's impacting people as well. So, just to finish, if you do still, after this, decide to play a game of chance, play Monopoly as a roll of the dice, then that is your future. You will go directly to jail, and you will not pass go, and you will not collect 200. So thank you very much for listening. Please visit Macanta at stand B9. We have Monopoly Live game. It's the latest offering from Hasbro. Monopoly Live to give away if you come and drop your business card. And there is a white paper about this presentation that's available from macanta.com.au. Just go to the resources section. It's there free. You don't have to register. We don't know you've even been. You can get that there. Have I got any time for questions, if there is any?
Absolutely not. Thank you. So, Karen, thank you very much. Not a truer word has been said to a lot of things listening to this. And I think, remember the pinky promise? Remember everyone did the pinky promise? If you listen to some of the things that Karen said today, you will go through a lot less grief from a tool set selection and actually using it. Now, we've got lots of exciting things still to happen. But before that happen, a little present for you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much once again, Karen.
Thank you.